Hi, good afternoon, it's Dean from maverickstar Observatory. Guys, I don't think we're going to make it as a species. You know, our priorities are so wrong these days. You know, it frustrates me. I've done a video yesterday, Heads Up, Earth at a Glance, Earth's Health, Pole Shift News. And you can see yourself, 619 views. And it wasn't just that video was a particular bad one. If we go back to the last one I did, you can see just a couple of videos back on the top line, you know, again 918 views. When we talk about other things such as Pluto's atmosphere collapsing, it seems to grab everybody's attention. When you bring it back down to Earth and what's happening with our planet, you lose people's attention, and I think that's really dangerous. It makes me wonder where we're going to go from here. You know, with the great majority of people at the moment on this planet not even bothered about the well-being of the planet, and we know that's the case, don't we? You know, when we look at the Grand Pacific Ocean garbage patches, it's not just the Pacific, there is about 7 or 8 of these now, massive patches of garbage just floating round in our oceans. This is unlike, you know, the pole shift. This is our doing. We have polluted this planet with that. We are killing off the marine biology across the range, ruining marine nursery grounds where, you know, the fish spawn their young and, you know, replenish the stocks. This is exactly what we're doing, and we're not just polluting our oceans around the world. We're polluting the Great Lakes that are landlocked on our continents. I know, guys, I know I'm not picking on anyone, because I know there's a lot of problems that are just, you know, distracting us all from, you know, being more interested in these things, but we cannot continue going down this road. You know, the world depends on the ocean food stocks to keep them fed, as well as what they do on the land. But look what's happening. We're losing arable land due to climate change. We're losing fishing grounds and, you know, numbers of fish across the range due to pollution. This is half of our fault, and, you know, we're taking no action. And, you know, if we can't get people interested in science, in the planet that they live on, then, you know, I don't know where we're going to move forward from here. You know, we are not out the neck of the woods yet, and we certainly haven't reached the equilibrium point where things begin to get better. But, you know, I see from the comments on the video that I removed, okay, you know, if you don't like what I hear, what I'm saying, then just simply unsubscribe. Don't come back. If you don't care about your planet, you know, I'd rather you go and subscribe to something stupid on there where your brain can be turned to porridge. You know, I really am losing patience and the will as well, you know, with what I see. It's just ignorance and deliberate ignorance. And, you know, you just give some people an excuse to moan, they will moan. You've only got to look at the thumbs up and the thumbs down of the videos, and thankfully the majority of the people that subscribe to this channel appreciate what we do and the work and effort that we put in. You know, they enjoy the enthusiasm that I have for the topics that we talk about, but they are also, you know, delinquents out there, and you can't stop them. This is the problem with general public. You know, I just don't understand some people. They have a bad day, they take it out on you. I know this is the case because I've been on YouTube now for about 10 years, and, you know, I see it regularly. But this is a destructive behaviour that is becoming more frequently apparent, and I think it's a digression. And, you know, we don't need any more digression. You know, we need to be working together as a team, if it can be possibly achieved. And, you know, we have done well over the last few years, you know, working as a team. But now we see something has changed. And I think it's largely to do with COVID-19 and a few other things as well combined. I think people's generally are getting fed up, and as a result, I think they're losing track of the important things in life, and they do not consider the sun coming up every day as something of importance to them, because it's taken for granted that that will be the case. It's like they take for granted the oxygen in our atmosphere that enables us to be alive in the first place. Without the oxygen, it doesn't matter whether you drive a Bentley or a Volkswagen. Regardless, you won't be driving anything if there's no oxygen in the atmosphere. There will be no life on this planet that depends on oxygen, at least. I don't know what to do to encourage people anymore. I don't. I see a lot of big mistakes being made. I'm 47 years old, and I still remember the stories that my grandparents told me, and it's a shame, because if you try and tell the younger generations about these, they're not interested. The brains aren't the same, and I think it's just because they've got just too much to occupy their time with the internet, TikTok, and all the other social media websites where they can take the selfies and put them on there for all the friends to see. It's miles away from the path that we should be on, in my opinion, anyhow. And that there's a big problem. When these stories of our ancestors, our grandparents, fail to go into the ears of the newer generations, then they're never going to appreciate, some of those stories. For instance, the stories that perhaps some of you guys remember about the war, the Second World War, how bad it was, how hard it was to get through those times. If these younger generations don't understand these stories, then it's going to be 10 times easier for them to get themselves back in a situation where they're looking at going back into a war with another 10 countries. And the problem is, without the respect of the knowledge, they're going to easily go into a war, as opposed to if they listened to the stories, they would have a little bit of respect and think, we never want to do that. Let's put a bit more time into negotiation. Let's talk and negotiate ourselves out these problems. I showed just before Christmas the doomsday clock. It's about 100 seconds. I haven't checked to see if it's been updated yet, but it was 100 seconds before midnight. And that's largely due to climate and the threat of nuclear war. Can you believe it? That's what we are facing with in this day and age. On top of what nature's throwing at us with climate change affecting the food production of our world. And then you add to that the fact that we're polluting our oceans and wiping out the fish stocks. It's like we're on a course for destruction. We haven't got to the point where the poles reverse yet. The magnetosphere goes down and cancer increases exponentially, along with cardiac arrest. And then, you put that on the side, and then you add to this equation, all the other biodiversities on our planet that will be affected with the magnetosphere going down. And, we are looking at, in a short term, a great disaster taking place. No two ways about it. And how do you capture the attention of people to warn them of this? Because largely they don't know, and largely they don't care. So how can I think that there is an optimistic outcome to what we are approaching? Today's society is so fragile. I say it to people that the cities are the most toxic and dangerous places to live in this modern era, whilst governments around the world try and encourage people to move more into the cities and less out into the open countryside. They're not making it easy on homesteaders anymore. People that want to get off the grid, they don't want that. They want you all in the city because it's easier to control you. If they can keep the supplies coming into the city, like energy, food, they can sustain them. But if we look back in our ancestral history, when the food stopped going into the cities, they decayed, and people went back to hunter and gathering because it was more successful for them to do that. And this day and age, we can't do it. It's been banned and forbidden for most countries' residents to go hunting off grid. So, you know, we are on a tightrope, and it's very windy, and it's only a matter of time before we fall off that tightrope and the system comes crashing down around us. And with over 90% of the population of the planet are unaware of these situations taking place, it's going to be absolute catastrophic. I don't even, sometimes want to think of what's going to happen. I just know that in the history of the last 100 years, cannibalism was something that turned up when food became a premium and was more scarce to get hold of. If we look back to Russia and the great blockade that took place there, we can see people turn to cannibalism. Over 2,000 people in 1 year are arrested for cannibalism, and over 100,000 people dying every month because of the lack of food getting into that city. If we think that we cannot be vulnerable to these situations again, then we really need to open our eyes, because it is only a matter of a certain few situations changing before that behaviour comes back. I know some of you are growing your own food. It's not a bad idea. If it really alleviates the cost of the expenditure of food for you in your monthly outgoings, that's not a bad thing. Not only that, you control how healthy the food is, but can you imagine what would happen in a grid down situation where the logistics of any country in the world shut down for a number of reasons? Could be a return to a glacial period, the ice cables, the cables get ice on them, they collapse. We know this happens in this day and age when bad winters happen, but can you imagine if it happened for a prolonged period of time? What about a CME coming off the sun, knocking out the grid? And what about just a war starting up? All these things threaten the logistics that supply cities, and therefore make us vulnerable for these things. And we're not even teaching our kids in schools these days how to light a fire, how to, source their own food and live off the land. We don't teach, can you believe it, our kids this anymore. In schools, they have to go to, beavers or scouts or cubs or wherever else it is that, where they can learn bushcraft skills. And how many of us these days send our kids to such lessons? Most kids these days think that milk comes from the supermarket and don't realise that it actually comes from cows. There is a massive ill education and a lack of education in some key skills that we should never have ever took off the curriculum. Yet we have. And in a situation where we face multiple catastrophes, and we do, guys, face multiple catastrophes, with climate change, reducing food production, pollution in the oceans, a CME possibility overdue, floods, landslides, major earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions, and we could then also think about the exotic ones which are also overdue, and we only have to look to our moon to see that these things do happen in our history. I'm talking about meteorite impacts and comet impacts. We don't know what will be the next thing. We just know that, if you ask any expert in the fields of the things I've mentioned, they will say it's overdue. So we're gambling right now. I've always said the best policy anyone could ever have is a few provisions put up in a possible bug out bag to help you out of a situation. If we go back to those Chile earthquakes, the big ones that happened, I think there was a magnitude of about 8. How many people would have been immediately better off if they could have the ability to clean water so that they could drink fresh water, and have the amenities to cook some food, and have their own medical kits that, you know, took care of, you know, not serious operations but minor cuts and wounds. How much better off would everybody have been in that Chile earthquake if that was what they had? What about the Sinatra catastrophe? You know, the tsunamis that we've seen around the world. How much better off would people have been if they'd just had a simple bug out bag? Something that you outlay a couple of $100 on, and you've got to put that away for that day you hope never comes. In a day like today, the chances of you needing such a thing are becoming more frequent. You know, the odds are going up against us. It's just a matter of time. We're not working together, guys. And the majority of the people are unaware of what's going to happen. So, you know, I think the chances of a catastrophe are more so inevitable now than they ever have been. It is just simply a matter of time, and the first words that will be spoken on anybody's mouth will be, "I didn't see this coming," when it happens. They've got to then look at their families that they're responsible for taking care of and say, we're in trouble. It's not just, you know, a few events. It's a lot to do with attitude. The attitude is completely wrong. You know, corruption is on an unprecedented scale globally, and it is making people wicked and cruel to each other, and it's not a nice place. I tell you now, we are turning the world into hell, and I've said this before, you know, hell is just a gathering of people and having a terrible attitude and opinions to things that you would not want to associate with. That is hell, and we're bringing hell on earth right now with these attitudes. Oh son, if you want to earn some money, you can't be thinking about the well-being of others. You've got to put that conscience in the closet, otherwise you're never going to make any money. You know how many times I've heard this? These are the same people that gambled with, you know, retirees' pensions, left them with nothing. We all remember Maxwell, don't we? Who then miraculously fell off the back of his yacht and was never seen again. You know, hopefully I've left you with a few things to think about, guys. I will say there is a link down there if you want to help support our observatory. If you feel it's worthwhile, it's not mandatory, it's entirely up to you. You know, but I will say this, there's a lot worse things you can do than support an observatory in this world. So, you know, with that, I hope I have opened your thoughts up to a few things. Maybe you'll take a bit of notice to some of the things that we've talked about in this video, and if so, you know, it's a good job. And you know, just wish you all the best for the rest of the day. As always, take care. Bye for now.